Hey all, Hermes here. Just want to bring you a quick deck tech for not the deck that I brought to the RC, but currently the V2, the second version of it. Um, yeah, you know, it's the next big Kindred mid-range deck that's gonna hit the format, following up with where Vampires left off, and yeah, let's just quickly go ahead and just jump into at least kind of the background, why bother listening to me? Well, I did get 9 and 6 with, frankly, a really clunky initial build of the deck. So we were able to day 2 with the deck, had a really big struggle in day 2, but already coming up with some solutions to various different issues that we had, and now, honestly, we're in a really good spot. I feel really confident with this second version. It's been performing really well for me, and I just wanted to bring it all to the world, and hopefully y'all also enjoy it. First things first, I always like to start my black-based mid-range decks with, our interaction suite. So, of course, for black-based mid-range, we're going to have our Fatal Push, our Thoughtseize, and we're also having an additional 2 copies of Duress. We are a deck that is trying to combo off to be able to get the kill, so having Duresses will enable us to clear the way, take out some kill spells, or some important enchantments, what have you, from your opponents. And then, lastly, we have 2 Shield's Edict and 1 Heartless Act as our last 2 removal spells of choice. Heartless Act is actually a really interesting one, so because of the way it's worded, remove up to 3 counters from target creature, this was actually kind of, it was made before stun counters that were actively bad, were introduced in Commonplace. So one fun thing that you can do is you can actually remove stun counters from your own slasher to untap it earlier. Really can catch your opponent by surprise, which is pretty funny. It also is really good in the mirror because you can kill your opponent's Archfiend, or you can get your opponent's Archfiends down to 0, and then you're able to kill them from there. But yeah, that's the interaction suite. I want to move on to the creatures next, and we have a wonderful suite of creatures. So first thing, I want to start off with probably the glue card, the role player of the deck, which is Fear of Missing Out. Honestly, it really is here as a 2/3 that when it enters, it rummages. That's the baseline that we're looking at. It's a reasonable body that is able to make sure that you hit further and further land drops. One of the biggest things that was a concern is getting to that 3 and 4 mana for your larger hits to be able to come into play and do what they're supposed to do to help close you the game. So this is a perfect stopgap, and the Delirium is just the cherry on top, because we can enable Delirium relatively easily, given we have a good mix of course, our lands. We have some discard outlets for them, as well as sorceries, instants, creatures, and enchantments. So, got a lot going on there. Very, very reasonable chance of hitting Delirium by like turn 5, 6, with just Fear of Missing Out, playing some spells, all that fun stuff. Secondly, honestly, the star of the show, one of the 2 A combo pieces in the A plus B combo is Unstoppable Slasher. This is probably one of the best mid-range threats going on right now in the format. It's really hard to remove because you have to kill it twice, so exile removal is at a premium right now, and frankly, it can be pretty expensive to exile this card. So it's in a really good spot, and yeah, really, you need a 4 of this because it's great on defense, it's great on offense, it kind of does everything that you're looking for. Then lastly, we have our 2 demons at the top of our curve, so up here at 4. So the first one I'm going to talk about is the second part of our combo, Bloodletter Backlazats. I'm sure you've seen it in Standard, it's been really popping off in Pioneer, and it's doing a lot of cool stuff. If you attack someone with a slasher and you have Bloodletter in play, if the slasher connects, they're just instantly dead because they lose half their life twice. Or they lose half their life and then double that damage, so it ends up being their full life. And then, Archfiend of the Dross is one of the best closers in mid-range decks right now, just because it's such an efficient body, it's got evasion, all of that fun stuff. And that's the creature suite. Pretty solid, and And lastly, I just want to talk about the engines for the deck, which incidentally also have some additional creatures on them. First things first, and this was honestly the primary reason why I wanted to splash red in the first place, is Fable the Mirror Breaker. Taking one out of Team CFB's book from all the way back in the Pro Tour earlier this year, where they added red to a black-based Kindred deck. I forget who it was that came up with the mono-black version of the deck, but they just realized being able to splash red for, in this case, both Fable and Blood Tithe was very much worth it, and it wasn't going to be too hard on the mana, similar to what we have here. So they ended up going with it, and it was very successful, so successful that Sorin ended up getting banned, so that way, you know, the deck wouldn't be taking over. But, I mean, it's Fable. This is a card we all know and love, and is incredibly powerful. What's very convenient about the deck is that all of the creatures in the deck are non-legends, so copying is very easy and very effective, and all of the creatures in the deck are great to copy. Secondly, we have Unholy Annex. Now, this card is really the crux of the deck. This is one of the reasons why it really came up. So, the first half, Unholy Annex, is a draw engine, and it occurs on your end step, which is great. So you get your first card right away when you play it, so you're already cycling, and then from there it's just pure gravy. And, you know, when you don't have a demon, it dings you for 2. Not really great when you're going against aggro, but you can kind of fudge it with control. But what's great is that if you have a demon in play already, you can really start recuperating life, being able to stabilize against aggro, and actually start to drain your opponent and close out. And what's great is that the backside of the room does give you that demon. So for 5 mana, you get a 6/6 flyer, which, unlike Archfiend, while it does have the death trigger to for your opponent's creatures, it also can kill you. So having just a vanilla 6/6 flyer is honestly pretty solid here. And yeah, our numbers here are pretty simple too. We want to see these 4 cards every game: Fable, Fear of Missing Out, Unstoppable Splasher, and Archfiend the Dross, just because they help us get to the rest of our combo pieces, and we also don't want to get our hand all clunked up with Bloodletters and Unholy Annex, because those cards each have diminishing returns with the more that you have. There's been times where you get clumped up with like 3 annexes but no pressure, which is a little awkward, so having 1 less annex to ensure you have pressure is really good there. Lastly, let's move on to the mana base. So over here, of course, this is Arena. We don't have Urborgs, but in place of one of these swamps would be an Urborg in paper and MTGO. Pretty standard. We have 2 castles, 4 swamps, plus the Urborg, a Takenuma, and then 3 Mutavaults, which are also demons that you get to use for your Unholy Annex triggers. Pretty simple, pretty self-explanatory. And then, because we always want to be hitting red on 2, we have all of these lands. We have 14 total duels. Of course, we have the fast lands, so Blackleaf Cliffs, and we have the Shockland and Blood Crypt. Blazemire Verge is perfect here just because red is a supporting color, so you're always going to be able to cast your Thoughtseize and Fatal Push. And then on turn 2, if you have a swamp in play, now you can start casting your FOMOs and your other different red cards that you have. Lastly, Haunted Ridge is just good. It's also a probably untapped land. It comes in 3 or later, and very frequently you can sequence between Cliffs, Ridge, and all your other lands to be able to have the right colors at the right time. And yeah, that's what we got for the main deck. In the sideboard, I've split things up conveniently kind of into 2 packages. So you have the package up here that's really focused on the aggro matchup. So you have Torch the Tower, which is just a phenomenal 1-mana removal spell. Kill small creatures and exiles them. Great against Phoenix, great against Elves. Just does a ton of work. And realistically in this deck, it's actually not too hard to bargain because you have everything that Fable's doing for you. You have Fear of Missing Out. Since it's an enchantment, you can bargain it, which is actually pretty spicy. If you have 2 in play, you can bargain 1 to be able to get your Delirium count for your other creatures. And yeah, it's honestly not too difficult to work around. Then you have your classic suite of sweepers. So we have, right now we're currently running Path of Peril. I've seen some arguments for Hidetsugu Consumes All. It's kind of up in the air which one makes the most sense, maybe even a split. I'm currently running with Path of Peril just because there's a reasonable amount of decks that run a ton of 2-drops I want to be able to answer. And we also have Extinction Event. Another great one, great against mono green, great against mid-range mirrors, etc. And lastly, we have Meat Hook, which is great for small creature decks, and also just great against Cat Oven. And then we have the cards that we typically bring in for more controlling matchups. So you have Duress, Misery Shadows, you got a pair of them, an Unlicensed Hearse, a couple of Go Blanks, a Lily, and an Ashiok. So between these cards, I just want to call out real quick, yes, Misery Shadow is a non-bow with Archfiend of the Dross. However, you have to remember, this card is coming in for matchups where you either, one, really want to cancel death triggers, so Cavalier and Troll death triggers in mono green, Heartfire Hero and Cacophony Scamps in those red combo decks. It's much more impactful to turn off their death triggers than it is to keep our death triggers on. So it's coming in there, or it's coming in against control when they're not running many creatures anyway, so who cares about the death triggers from Archfiend? It's just able to provide a lot more early pressure. You can always just attack and then dump a bunch of mana into it if you have nothing better to do. It's just a really good threat in that case. And then for your Exile Graveyards package, you have 1 Hearse, 1 Ashiok, and 2 Go Blanks. This is just pretty classic, pretty standard. Great for Phoenix. The Go Blanks are great for a lot of control decks. Ashiok's great for decks that like to toolbox themselves, so Niv-to-Light and Enigmatic. And then lastly, of course, Liliana the Veil. Good old Lily. She is such a powerful planeswalker, especially against control, because you can just very easily, if you get her in play on turn 3, on the play, control just has such a hard time answering this card, and you'll be able to ultimate, get them down to less lands, and hopefully be able to close the game from there. And yeah, so that's all the cards. Before I let y'all go, and hopefully you guys do end up staying for following leagues, MTGA gameplay, etc. I do want to at least list out kind of some of the combos that the deck offers. So I'm going to move these over here for now. So kind of the first one is the one that I mentioned at the beginning. So you have Bloodletter and Slasher. So attack with Slasher, you remove half their life total, and then you double the amount of damage you dealt. So it's going to go up even higher. Really, really cool effect, and yeah, people just die. If they don't have anything to interact with you, you just kill them on turn 4. Pretty powerful, and rather easy to interact with, because you're only killing a 3-mana creature or just blocking it. So it's, in my opinion, it's a lot more fair than something like the Sorin Vein-Ripper, but it's still a really powerful combo. Next, I really want to just talk about using both the Unholy Annex here and Mutavault. As a reminder, Mutavault is a demon, and because of the way Mutavault is activated, you can actually tap it for the colorless mana and then activate it tapped to still be able to get the trigger. So very frequently, if you're playing Annex on turn 4 and you have a Mutavault in play, you just use your mana use your other lands to cast the Annex, and then you just activate the Mutavault, get the trigger, and hey, you know, nice little drain, you get your card advantage, and you get going with that engine. That's one of the things that makes your deck so powerful. Next, I really want to hit on the Double Reflections combo, which, again, you know, if you get the backside of the reflection of Kiki Jiki, since it's non-legendary, it can continue to copy itself for however much mana that you have, and then on the next turn you can just full swing with all of them and deal a lot of damage, or you can also just copy one of your other threats. So copying a bunch of Slashers can really cut someone's life total down super quickly. Tons of Bloodletters is pretty difficult to come back from, especially if only one of them connects. Archfiend of the Dross, also very difficult when you have multiples of, and then in particular, I really do want to call out the combination of Fable with Fear of Missing Out, because yes, you can do kind of that combo when you have 2 Fables, but you can also just combo with 1 Reflections and 1 Fear of Missing Out. Basically, as long as you have Delirium, you can, for as much mana as you have, or however much life your opponent has, you never know which comes first, you can tap the Reflections to copy the Fear of Missing Out, attack with both of them, and then use the attack trigger to untap a creature, have that untap the Fable, which then means, right afterwards, copy one of the Fears of Missing Out. So now you have another creature with haste that can attack again, and since each new Fear of Missing Out copy is a new game object, it gets that first time each turn trigger on consecutive combat steps, so you can just keep attacking with a 2/3 until you run out of mana or your opponent runs out of life or runs out of blockers. It's pretty solid and frankly really easy to invest in because you're not really needing to put much into assembling the combo. It's just 2 cards you're probably playing on curve anyway. And then last little bit, this one is honestly like a really powerful one, and it's kind of the other just one-shot your opponent combo. This is actually a really good combo when you're playing against aggro decks, because aggro decks, you tend to have to just block constantly until you can stabilize. So this combo actually, of course, this combo, like many of them, is including Fable, but you're also going to have the Annex and the Bloodletter. So actually, let's just go ahead and really highlight it. So what you want to do here is, of course, you have a Bloodletter and an Annex in play. You're going to use the Reflections to copy the Bloodletter. So now you're doubling twice. Of course, hopefully both Bloodletters can attack at this point. Assuming that they can, you're going to swing each of them for 2 in the air, which both will get doubled twice. So each will deal a total of 8 damage. So in combat alone, you're dealing 16. And then as long as both Bloodletters continue to live until your end step when your Unholy Annex triggers, you'll sack it so that way Unholy Annex resolves first before you sacrifice the Bloodletter to the Reflections trigger. And now you're going to be doubling that life loss twice. So you're going to be doubling it up to 8. It's 24 in a turn. You can just really easily one-shot someone with this sequence of events and just close out games really quickly against aggro, frankly. That's the most often circumstance you're going to be seeing it, is you stabilize against aggro, so this is your way to just close the game really quick and make sure they can't get over the line before you can. And yeah, that's really it. The deck is honestly pretty insane. I'm really excited to bring some content to you all around the deck, whether it's some arena gameplay, some leagues, possibly some challenges, and I'm definitely going to be playing this at my locals at Card Art pretty consistently whenever I do decide to play, so feel free to check that out as well. Card Art's Twitch channel is SCV Card Art, and also Optimus Tom, good friend of mine, is actually posting all the VODs on his channel, so you'll be able to see them after the fact. And what's great is that in the next few days, we should see a couple of games with me on this list, being able to put a lot of pressure on some really interesting and spicy decks that we did end up bringing to the shop. Yeah, with that, I'm Hermes the Nerd. Thank you for checking out my deck tech on Rakdos Demons. I hope you enjoyed it, and yeah, hope y'all also try it out and see just how powerful all these cards are when put together. Yeah, see y'all later.